Martin Stringer was born in England during the toughest part of World War II. His father was an RAF fighter pilot for the British during World War II. He was shot down over the Mediterranean Sea and died in 1943. So his mother, who was also British, a widow with a child in England during a World War. After the war, they decided to go to the United States and kind of see what that was like. And there were a lot of the U.S. soldiers from those places, and they wanted to show them their towns. There was one guy from Ada, Oklahoma. He said, well, you got to come see Ada. It's really kind of a cool place. They came, and I think the soldiers showed them around, and they liked it and stayed. I met Martin and many of his friends at the summer fraternity rush parties at the University of Oklahoma, which occurred during the summer of 1959. Martin and I became fraternity brothers, and we really liked Martin from the very beginning. Martin is a person who, he knows everybody. He will sit down with you in a room by himself and talk to you and learn about you and learn about your family, kind of what your career has been, where you've gone to school, you know, what you've done. He really shows a personal interest in the clients, and it doesn't matter who it is. His willingness to sit down and talk to people and show a personal interest in them is something that's pretty amazing. And then, you know, his photographic memory, he never forgets that, and he is able to pick people out and say, you know, hey John, how are you doing? Or hi Judy, how's it going? You know, how's this doing? You know, like, he remembered me, you know, that's pretty cool. So that's great. And then the other thing that I remember about it, he's great, you know, strategic planner and of transactions and outcomes. But he was unique in that in major meetings on important issues, he would never write down anything. He maybe had a blank piece of paper, if anything, and then he'd remember what the meeting was all about. And all the rest of us are over there taking notes and bringing big binders in and everything else. And he's like, well, let's talk about this. And I said, Martin, what, don't you have the copy of the draft of the agreement? Did you read it? Yeah, I read it. But he had this ability to kind of cut to the chase on issues that were important. The most significant transaction that Martin and I worked together on was the acquisition of the Seattle Supersonics and ultimately the Oklahoma City Thunder. I remember we just worked very, very closely together. And I was in a different area than he was, but we talked all the time and made sure we were on the same page, reporting to the ownership group of the Sonics/Thunder. And we actually worked together to some extent on the temporary relocation of the Hornets from New Orleans. So he's been a great partner and great friend for over 65 years.
I met Martin, 39 years ago in law school. Just an incredible man, great lawyer, prolific business getter, very kind. He was always nice to me. I got the opportunity to go up to his lake house in Minnesota with 5 or 6 of our partners, which was always a great time. We'll surely miss him. The one story I remember on Martin, when I was in law school, he was recruiting me. And I decided to stay at the law firm that I was working at as a law clerk. And so first day of the bar, I was over at the Hub restaurant, and Martin came by and said, so where'd you end up going to work? And I told him, and he said, well, son, when you want to work for a real law firm, call me. And that's just the way he was. He was saying that half jokingly, but we will truly miss him. He was a true friend, a great person, and God bless his soul.
Martin Stringer, what an interesting person. I am not sure that I have ever met or I will ever meet anyone as interesting as Martin. He was loyal to his friends, completely dedicated to his work. He had insight into people. He could read people. He was tireless in his efforts to make things better for his clients, for his friends. Martin's determination, his desire to live, exceeds anything I think I've ever seen. When he first learned that not just his arm would be removed, but his shoulder. He had a plan. He had talked to people who had had similar experiences. He thought about how he was going to work and drive. He talked about all the things he was still going to do and how he would do them. And so I could be wrong, but I don't think he wasted much time between learning and developing a plan for survival. He was a survivor. He was a wonderful friend and the consummate lawyer, and he will be missed.
Martin Stringer, was a legend. As I put in my note to the firm, Martin had the heart of a lion, the strength of a Samson, the will of a Job. Nothing fazed Martin. And he was just one of the few people that if you ever needed anything, you could go to him, and he would always sit and listen to you. My favorite story about Martin was Martin, how did you get Trey Young as a client? And Martin was flying back from Atlanta on a plane, and Trey Young's dad was sitting next to them. And of course, Martin used every opportunity to market, and he was shameless. And what I didn't know about that story is that the lawyer who Martin took his place was sitting in the seat behind him the whole time, as he was sitting with Trey Young's dad and letting him know how he should be his lawyer. Only Martin could get away with that. I'm sure the guy behind him was about to lose his mind, but only Martin could do that. Martin was shameless in a positive way when it came to marketing. He was the ultimate example of, he just had no fear. No client, no potential client was not game for Martin to talk to. And Martin didn't fear rejection. He lived with the knowledge that he was just going to keep moving every day. And once the clients started talking with Martin, they realized how valuable he was. From problem solving to strategic planning to thinking, he just had the trust and commitment from our business leaders throughout this community, throughout his tenure as a lawyer.
Martin is the consummate problem solver. I had people ask me, including my husband, how long do you think Martin will practice? And, when do you think he'll retire? And this was a while, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it was like, I really think that Martin will practice as long as he can, because he gets so much enjoyment out of helping people solve their problems. Obviously, great judgment, so loyal and reliable for his clients, and would go to the end of the earth for clients, friends, to help solve problems, help people that was in his circle, get to the result, that they wanted or needed. Obviously, he has a reputation for being this incredible rainmaker, which he was for sure. And he knew how to market like no one I've ever seen. But it just wasn't about marketing for him. It was about the relationships. And I think that's why he was so effective at it, is that our practice, it's a relationship business. And so, he was charismatic and, never met a stranger. I think, clients or prospective clients, could quickly feel that this just wasn't a sales pitch, that it was real, and that if you were a client of Martin's, he would do anything for you. If you needed something, it wouldn't matter whether it was on a weekend, while he was on vacation. He was always accessible because he cared so much.
Several amazing things Martin brought to this firm. One was his marketing and business development. Everybody knows about that, but he was also just a really good legal technician. He knew a lot about the law. He'd seen a lot of transactions, a lot of deals, a lot of litigation, and always had a perspective to offer for anything you were working on that was, unparalleled. And I heard those things about Martin. I experienced them with Martin. What I didn't hear about Martin as he was coming in, and what I grew to learn, grew to love about Martin, was just how supportive he is, and how much, he took it very personally to see that this firm succeeded. And he didn't just bring new business. He brought camaraderie. He brought, the ability to build a team in the brief time between when I got to McAfee Taft and Martin got to McAfee Taft, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. And that precipitated the New Orleans Hornets coming to Oklahoma City. He had a lot of involvement in that, but he was also very, very much involved in all aspects of the new ownership group acquiring the Seattle Supersonics and bringing them here, and continued to work with the Thunder for years after they got here. It was several years later that I got brought on board to that team to help represent the Thunder, and others as well, but none more than Martin was just a cheerleader for me. I mean, introducing me to the right people within the organization so that I could integrate myself with them, helping me through difficult issues with them, both legally and just politically, so to speak. Martin, number one, wanted to see McAfee Taft succeed, but number two, he was engaged and committed to helping all of our lawyers succeed. And he would, for any project, he would put together a group of folks working on it and, give them free rein to run with it, but with the knowledge that he's always there to help and he's always paying attention, so he knows what's going on. Just a fantastic partner, good friend. Even when he was getting very ill and he was having to travel for health appointments, he was texting me, asking how my family was doing. It's just the kind of guy he is. He really cares about people, cared about our lawyers, their families, and obviously a guy that no one will ever come close to replacing or even replicating. And McAfee Taft was better for him having been here, and very fortunate to have him for the years that he was here.
I started working for Mr. Stringer in May of 1995. I worked in the mailroom at McKinney Stringer, and I got promoted to being Mr. Stringer's driver. As I'm telling this, I'm remembering an exact moment where I'm sitting there waiting, and I had not met Mr. Stringer before, and he gets in, and off we go. And I was, I'm 20 years old, driving Mr. Stringer around, and I would sit out in front of buildings while he would go into meetings, and then he would come out of a meeting and I would take him to his next place. And it's a little bit back then, a little bit of a, when you're first starting, a little don't speak unless you're spoke to kind of thing. But he was very funny, actually, and interesting to talk to, and someone that obviously I respected very much, and so did everyone in the law firm. Everyone was intimidated by me because he had a presence. He very much had a presence around him. But when I gave my notice that I was leaving McKinney Stringer to go work for a Dallas law firm, he came into my office, and I'll never forget that. He cried. He was very emotional, very sad to see me leaving, very complimentary and kind to me. And then later, being a partner with him at McAfee Taft, every time I would see Martin, he would say, "There's the Lincoln lawyer." He referred to me as the Lincoln lawyer. He's always got something funny. But I will remember with great fondness kind of all those years working with Mr. Stringer at McKinney Stringer, and then having the pleasure of working with him at McAfee Taft and being his partner here. Just a great man, just a really great human being.
I have a heavy heart overflowing with sorrow, yet I hold wonderful memories of a man who was not only a wonderful law partner, but also a great friend, a man of exceptional professionalism and a high level of commitment and remarkable talent. After Martin joined McAfee Taft, he invited a handful of lawyers to join him at his lake home on Big Trout Lake in northern Minnesota. We had a great time, and it was a real adventurous time. Usually Richard Craig, Chris Coleman, Joe Llewellyn, Mike Norden, Keith McFall, and Tim Baumhoff and I went, and we had a great time while we were there. Martin was a spectacular lawyer. He was successful at an early age. He was really successful just about everything that he did. Clients loved him, they respected him, they trusted him, and they revered him. He gave them vision and confidence. Martin, my dear friend, we mourn our loss, but we celebrate your strength, your spirit, and your friendship. We're grateful for every moment that we shared with you.